Hey guys, Miss Kears here. Thought I would do these notes for you, and they'll be on Schoology. Well, you're finding them on Schoology, so I guess that makes me look like a fool. But I wanted to go over the notes for 45, 45, 90 right triangles. So first period, I was unable to give you this note packet before we left when all the craziness started. So you might want to occasionally pause this video, copy down the examples on a sheet of notebook paper, so then that way you will have them. I apologize that I did not get these to you, but I've uploaded another video for you to also watch, and then you'll also have this one. So you do not, those of you that do have the note packet, do not have this right triangle in your note packet. This I wanted to make sure I go over with you. So remember, this indicates the right angle. The two sides that form this right angle, those are your legs of the right triangle. And the side that is opposite from the right angle, that is your hypotenuse. You need to make sure that you understand this terminology, legs, hypotenuse, because I will be calling things the legs and the hypotenuse. So here's where first period you might want to pause and get this information down. Here also is our right triangle I just went over. So in a 45, 45, 90, there are two rules to help you find the measurements in the triangle. The first rule is that the legs are congruent. Congruent means they have the same measure. Their measures are equal. I abbreviate this simply as legs congruent. If you need to find the hypotenuse, your hypotenuse will be equal to the square root of 2 times one of the legs, or hypotenuse equals rad 2 times a leg. So as I said, first period, you might want to pause right here and copy down these two rules. So here we have some examples. So periods 2, 6, and 7, you already have these two examples. First period, you need to copy these down. So I'm going to start out by first identifying that this is a 45, 45, 90. Now, you don't need to know that both of these are 45. If you only know this one's a 45 and you know that's a right angle, that means this has to be a 45, because if you remember, a triangle can only add up to equal 180 on the interior angles. So I start out by knowing this side is the square root of 6. That's because that is a leg. That means automatically x, since it is our other leg, that this leg will equal this leg. So that means x is automatically equal to the square root of 6. Now, to find y is the hypotenuse. If you remember, my rule for hypotenuse is a hypotenuse equals one leg times square root of 2. So fill in what we know. Hypotenuse is y. A leg is radical 6 times radical 2. If you remember when we did our units on radicals, 6 and 2 are the radicands. Because both of these are square roots, you are allowed to multiply the radicands together. So that will give me y equals square root of 12. Now, you cannot leave it the square root of 12. On your online Schoology assignments, it will not say the square root of 12. They will simplify that square root. So you need to break it down. So square root of 12 is going to give me, I can use 4 and 3. Could have also used 2 and 6. 4, 2 and 2. So There's a pair of 2's. Take 1 out. Remember, our leftovers 3 go back under the radical. So that means y is equal to 2 square root of 3. So, first period, if you need to, pause right here. Get this copied down. Make sure you also get that the other leg, because the legs are congruent, the other leg also equals square root of 6. All right then, our next example. First period, I hope you've paused this because I'm going to erase this. So pause and get this written down. Whoopsie, well, guess what? If I move that, then my little 45s that I put up in the angles don't move. Oh my goodness, I'm just going to have to undo all that. One more undo. There we go. All right, so in this triangle, we actually have two 45, 45, 90 right triangles. If this is a right angle, then this automatically is a right angle, which then makes this triangle 45, 45, 90. If this is 45 and that's 90, then that means automatically this angle up here is also 45. Now, in this triangle, because this is where I start out knowing a measurement, the measurement is 7. That is my hypotenuse, because it is opposite the right angle. So that means the side that is the x, that is a leg. And it will be a leg for this triangle and this triangle. That's because, remember, this is a right angle. So I'm going to start with this right triangle. So I'm going to get us a right triangle here. That looks close, so here we go. This is what we have. And here's my leg x. So I'm starting out with the hypotenuse. If I am starting with the hypotenuse, then that means you have to start with the hypotenuse rule. So if I'm going to start out with the hypotenuse rule, that rule says hypotenuse equals a leg times radical 2. So fill in what we know. We know the hypotenuse is 7. I know the leg is x times radical 2. So we have a one-step equation to solve right here. All right? This is times radical 2, so to undo multiplying by radical 2, you have to divide by radical 2. So I'm going to divide this side by radical 2, but I also have to divide the 7 by radical 2. On the right-hand side, those cancel out, leaving me with x equals 7 divided by radical 2. So at this point, I hope there are some of you sitting at home yelling at me, going, Miss Kears, you're not allowed to have a radical in the denominator of a fraction. Because that's what we have. And if you remember, when we did radicals, you cannot have this. And hopefully, most of you remember that to get rid of this, you are going to multiply by that same radical, which means you're going to multiply your numerator by radical 2. So in the numerator, I have radical 2 times 7, or 7 radical 2. In the denominator, radical 2 times radical 2 would be the square root of 4. But the square root of 4 is just 2. So that means x is equal to 7 radical 2 over 2. So now I know what x is. X is 7 radical 2 over 2. Well, in this 45, 45, 90 triangle, y is also the leg. So if I know, my other rule states that the legs are congruent, so that means y is equal to x, and we know what x is. X was 7 radical 2 over 2. So first period, if you were not writing this down as I did it, pause here and make sure you get this down. Periods 2, 6, and 7. If you were not writing this down as I did it, then you need to pause and get this written down. So I'm hoping this is making a little bit of sense to you guys. So I'm going to move on to our last two examples. And here we have some squares. Now, I did not mark our angles here, but they are right angles because I tell you that this is a square. So I tell you the length of one side of a square is 17 meters. So this side is 17 meters. Now, since our side is given to us with a unit of measure, meters, we're going to need to make sure that our answer has a unit of measure, meters, on it. Find the length of the diagonal of the square. Well, here's our diagonal. Because the diagonal is opposite the right angles, that means my diagonal is the hypotenuse. So I'm going to need to use my hypotenuse rule. Hypotenuse equals a leg times radical 2. So my hypotenuse x equals leg 17 times radical 2. I cannot multiply an outside number with a radicand inside. So to simplify this, you simply get rid of the multiplication dot. So x is equal to 17 radical 2. And that is our answer. So everybody at this point needs to pause and get this copied down. So hopefully you've gotten that copied down. And I'm going to move on to the next one. The length of a diagonal of a square, so since it's a square, right angles, right, is 6 inches. So the hypotenuse is 6 inches. Find the length of one side. So I'm going to find the length of that side. So since I know the hypotenuse, I have to use the hypotenuse rule. Whatever measurement you know, you have to start with that rule. So that's a leg times radical 2. My hypotenuse is 6 equals, my leg is y times radical 2. We have an equation here to solve. To get rid of times radical 2, we are going to divide by a radical 2. So these cancel out. So that gives me y equals 6 divided by radical 2. So after that example I did on the previous slide where we had a radical in the denominator, at this point all of you should be yelling at your screens, your phones, whatever, Miss Kirsch, you can't have a radical in the denominator. Get rid of it. So that's what I'm going to do. I am going to flip my equation around. I'm going to put y on the left and 6 radical 2 on the bottom. So, multiply by a radical 2 radical 2. So this is y equals 6 divided by, or times radical 2, divided by, all right, square root of 2 times square root of 2 equals square root of 4, but we all know the square root of 4 is just 2. And I know many of you are hoping that at this point I am finished. Not quite, because 6 and this 2 in your denominator are both on the outside. You can divide 2 into 6. So 2 goes into 6 3 times. So that gives me 3 radical 2. So now I'm finished. I hope you all understand this. You have an assignment on Schoology. It opened up today the 17th. It will be opened up until Thursday the 19th at 11:59 p.m. So you need to get online and do those 8 problems on Schoology. Once again, I hope you all are safe and well. And if your parents have your house on lockdown, they are only concerned about your health and wanting to keep you healthy. So, I miss you guys. Wish you were here sitting in front of me. This is a little weird talking to my phone, but I hope you understand this. And please, if you've not watched my other video, please watch it. I think you'll enjoy it. Bye-bye, guys.